Right, hello everyone. This is the third attempt at a video typing. Alright, so essentially these videos I've shared with friends and obviously the class members in OK, and with the feedback I've received from my friends, it's actually prompted me to make this third video. So essentially the people that are close to me, like for example my partner, best friend, they've seen both videos I've made and they go, yeah, that's Alan. Uh, there's aspects that I associate with him, and I don't see anything different. Whereas I have some friends in the typology community that I meet up with where I live, and I've received some feedback from in one particular person, and maybe I'm doing a disservice with how I describe it, but I would say that they were essentially their association with or perception of me is not what was reflected in those videos, which I found quite interesting because this is someone I've probably met, I don't know, maybe 6 times or so, in an environment where we are discussing, not necessarily the feedback in the questions of the video typing, but we're discussing things that are beyond water cooler small talk. So I found that quite interesting. So what that did is it prompted me to say, okay, well, after I watched this video from Sarah MBTI, one of my favorite YouTubers, hello, talking about ENFJ stereotypes. And the reason why this is all relevant is because when she was talking about her responses, I felt that there were definitely things that she had thought about. And it's not that it was scripted per se, but she knew what she wanted to say instead of winging it. And the reason that's relevant is because both videos I've made, I've winged it, looked at the questions as much as I can for the very first time, at least 80% of the questions, and I've just come up with an answer on the spot. What I've done now is I've actually sat down, I've gone through the Dave and Shannon's typing questions, and I've actually written out some positions and seen where I've come to. So I don't know if that's going to change the way I present my answers, but it definitely will have more formulated conclusions. So let's see if this makes any difference to what others think, or even myself. Okay, so the very first question was, what is your average day, week like? And this is actually quite interesting. When I started writing this, I couldn't get away from what I put in the first impromptu typing about structure. And I wrote here, structured in an attempt to provide the best balance we can find between responsibilities and commitments of your family, house, self, or another word would be priorities. But as I started drilling through this a bit further, actually what I have come to and surprised myself was, I would describe my average day week as positive. Just simply positive. And that's because I'm just going to read out what I wrote. I said, because even though the structure can be tedious, it has enabled us to find the best balance to date, where there's enough flexibility, either of us can block out time to do something we want to. And so I said, look, there's still sacrifices that we make, but in general, life is much less physically demanding compared to what it was before kids had a routine. And I suppose I emphasize that because even before kids, we still had a structured life, in the sense of, we'll cook dinner at these times to go to bed, in this window of time in general. These days might be, playing sports or whatever. You know, calendar schedule, I guess, just to make sure that we can meet the commitments we want to. So then I've put here, the flexibility is real because we often... Oh, yeah, okay, right. So what I was trying to communicate here is, at the start of the week, or start of the weekend, we might sit down and say, look, what are the key things we need to get done this weekend? Quite often, we might only get somewhere between 50 and 80% of it done. It doesn't really matter, we just shift it down. It's not like we're making these commitments necessarily because they must do, but at least gives us a bit of direction and focus, especially when you have awkward pockets of time where you can't really do too much. Kids change a lot of things. Okay, so yeah, I'd describe my average day week like as positive. It's yeah, especially compared. And I didn't realize that until I started thinking about what life was like with our first child. Good, I guess 2 years ago now, and where it is today, and it's significantly improved. Okay, so the next one is tell us one of the most stressful times in your life. So once again, I wrote a bunch of things, and then as I've gone through the process of drilling it down further, I've actually changed my viewpoint a fair bit. So I started off by saying I wanted to distinguish between being stressed versus being in a rut or confused. I don't want to use the word depressed, but I can't really think of a substitute. But and then I was trying to distinguish that stressed is more an understanding, being at a point of no return, do or die. But I've changed that somewhat as I started trying to reflect on some examples in the past of being stressed. And for me, what it comes down to is I don't think I consider myself stressed unless it's going to stop me sleeping at night. It's really that simple. If I can't stop thinking about it that night, then it's definitely of impact. And so what I'd say is then, even though the past 6 months have been the most challenging, I would say, for my whole life, it hasn't been stressful. I haven't been able to not sleep about it. I think a lot of that's more to do with how I'm handling it versus whether it's actually stressful or not. So perhaps my definition needs a shift now that I'm thinking about it. But essentially, now that I've got more ability to be self-aware, more ability to communicate those thoughts either to myself or to others, I'm not in a position where I've got this burden weighing on me that I just can't stop thinking about. But essentially, if I think back at the past, my stresses were typically related to roadblocks or hurdles for something that I wanted to do, and trying to figure out ways to overcome that. Usually it's related to, if I try and generalize as much as possible, trying to do too much with too little. So some of the key things I can think of where I was definitely stressed over a period of time, and that period of time could be anything from a couple of days to like literally maybe a month. Usually it either comes down to money, time's another big one. So and I can think of one specific example where I had vested a lot of time and money into a project, and I'd taken as far as I could, and everything else now was reliant on the output of another individual. And that was extremely stressful for me, because the consequence was everything was wasted. It's actually funny now, because like when I think about it, I go, actually I don't care in the end. In the end, that money was sunk, that time was sunk, is what it is. But in that moment, it felt extremely stressful. Like what tools or levers can I pull to get this person to be more productive? And this was in my personal life too, not work related. Okay, so did I write anything else here? Yeah. Look, I'd say those has been the most stressful times in my life. The way my partner described it when I was asking her for confirmation if she agreed with this was, usually when I lose sleep overnight, it's because I'm trying to justify a decision. And so I agree with that. I think that's another way of paraphrasing what I'm saying, trying to do too much with too little. I know that I know I'm trying to do the impossible, or overstretch, and so I'm trying to figure out a way to justify it, rationalize it, or make it a reality, because I don't want to drop the quality. Okay, so next one. What are some problems you see with the world? Okay, so I still maintain the position I had in the last video. This is not really something I think about actively, if at all. So what I've put here is, on a high level, the world isn't fair in that the natural opportunities available are very dependent on where you're born. even in first world countries. And this is not really something I've thought about. It's a piece of information I've garnered from another resource in the past, but I think it is actually relevant when I think about it as a world problem. Uh, me being out of sight, out of mind is purely out of luck for being born where I am. I could have been extremely different elsewhere. So um, I do think that is a high level problem, that equity and fairness. However, I've also put, I'm not sure if these issues, conflict, I can't actually read what I've wrote, um, something and desires is any different to 20 years ago, let alone 100 years ago, let alone 1,000 years ago, in the sense that a lot of these issues and conflicts seem to be part of human nature, and where I'm getting at is this: the desires of people haven't changed over that period of time. What's changed in my perception is the exposure to these acts, because of the prevalence of social media and globalization through news, etc. So there's just more. I don't want to say awareness, because in the end the awareness is skewed to whatever the agenda of that outlet is. Okay, so then I've put here, I still agree with my previous conclusion in that, and I'm saying it slightly different, but that conclusion about trust of the media. So I still concur with that. I'm just making a generalization here. I've got nothing to back it up, but essentially, people do not seem as capable to be able to think for themselves. Seems to be a heavy reliance on influencers, experts, authority to tell them what is right, what is wrong, what's worthwhile doing, and so this upcoming generation is potentially, or not potentially, it is the largest mass manipulation scheme ever known to mankind. What will happen with that ability to mass manipulate, I don't know. I don't want to go Orwellian, 1984, all that type of stuff, but whoever controls the keys to that, as it wields immense power never seen before. Okay, then I've put here that on a deeper level, I am of the belief, with where I stand today, that a lot of these issues people talk about with these world conflicts, etc., we could have a better path to resolution if more people face their demons and insecurities. So what I've read here is I see those demons and insecurities as the root cause for much of the malaise and negative manifestations. Then again, manifestations is just a matter of perspective. What's negative to somebody is positive to someone else. But once again, that self-awareness, that self-acceptance, what I suspect it will translate to is a higher or greater degree of cooperation and collaboration. And after all, humans rule the world because of how they collaborate and cooperate. So I think working on that will take it to the next level. Okay, next one. Tell us one of the best times in your life. So once again, I've got a similar position to what I held before, but I just wanted to expand on it slightly more, in the sense of that when I think of best times, I don't think of specific moments or days. What comes to me is a sustained fondness or feeling. I don't have an interval for what that sustained period of time is. I suspect it'd be like minimum 1 month, potentially somewhere between 1 to 6 months. Everything else is just normal vicissitudes, ups and downs. So yeah, definitely passage of time, overall semblance. So then what else have I written? I also agree that when I think of times that make me smile, when I think of times in the past that make me smile, usually it's both that had elements of harmony at work and home. But I've put here the irony is that with age, I can see that aspects important to me now were I don't know if they were actually had harmony back then. So I suppose it's actually even harder for me to have best of times now because it encapsulates more items. Uh, yeah, yeah, sure, that's a good point. Life was simpler when we were younger. Um, and then I put here, I hope I can say that in the future, this period of growth that I'm going through with the focus on self is something I can identify as the best and hopefully most important part of my life. Um, yeah, absolutely. I hope I can. The other thing I'd say is the way that I consider best is when I feel, I guess, this is interesting because I've referred to it before as harmony at work and home, but the part that's missing in that equation is I need to feel engaged in something, have a passion towards something. Um, just fix that focus. Um, yeah, and that's once again I've put as I've gotten older, the engagement has become progressively more and more complicated. I guess because there's more risks and sacrifices required for anything you want to do. There's more at stake. Yeah, I think that's interesting. Um, and just as a quick example, when I was younger, having a good time. I mean, this is like when I was 12 or whatever.